Welcome to episode 3 of Movie Talk. Today we're going to be talking about Top Gun Maverick. If you haven't watched an episode of Movie Talk yet, this is where we talk about the director, cinematography, writer, story, casting, characters, score, and sound design. All those pieces are really what make a movie what it is. Talking about all those pieces individually, we could better understand a film and the rating that I end up giving it. So Top Gun Maverick is a sequel to Top Gun that came out in 1986. It's been a damn long time since that. A quick summary of my experience, I thoroughly enjoyed the movie. I thought it was pretty entertaining. Tom Cruise is a person that really does care about delivering a good story and a good experience for the audience. Like how he does his stunts, very Jackie Chan-esque. Like he's mainly the one who's doing his own stunts. He doesn't have a stunt double that comes in and interrupts too much. He enjoys that just like Jackie Chan does. Now, I'm not calling Tom Cruise Asian. So Tom Cruise being a producer here, you kind of know that this film is gonna be jam-packed with action, thrills, you know, you're gonna be on the edge of your seat, you know, like sort of like Edge of Tomorrow. There's a lot of movies that I do enjoy from him as of recent that he's been releasing. This film feels a bit two-dimensional. I mean, I think it's because it's Tom Cruise that it has this, you know, sense of Hollywood and self-awareness of a movie. Because, you know, the music cues kicking in at a certain time, like it feels very 80s-esque, which is, I guess, good since it's based on a movie like that. So director of this movie is Joseph Kosinski, and looking at his work, he hasn't done too many major films, but he did work with Tom Cruise in Oblivion. There's films I haven't watched that he's directed, like Tron Legacy and Only the Brave. Tron Legacy, I was never really attracted to watch it, but you know, maybe one day when I have a kid, I'll sit down and we'll watch it together. I've never heard of Only the Brave, which is cool to discover a new film to watch. Joseph Kosinski, as the director, doesn't have too many films to look at and dissect, but I feel like you could surmise how the outcome of this film would be just based on the film he's already done. Top Gun Maverick overall feels like very polished and pretty and beautiful, but just very safe and two-dimensional, and ends up falling a little flat for me. If I were to give the rating of the director as of now, I would probably give him a 3 out of 5 since I think he's done some cool work. Especially, I did like Oblivion, and Top Gun Maverick to manage a project like this scale is quite incredible. I mean, you have a great team and crew with you, but to direct this vision and bring it all the way home, I really did enjoy the film. You know, I have no problems with it. So the cinematographer, Claudio Miranda, has worked with Cruise before and this director, which is always cool to see these relationships that are ongoing and looking towards building on other projects. I think this DP is extremely talented at making movies look great, and some of the cinematography in Top Gun Maverick takes my breath away. I feel like that really is the best part of the film. There's a lot of scenes that just, when it holds, it takes you in. There's a shot of Tom Cruise looking out towards the water where he's just a silhouette that really is ingrained in my head. So Top Gun Maverick is beautifully shot and captured by this DP. I feel like if anything, go watch this movie just to be captivated by the cinematography, which you will be. It's very poignant and it's beautiful. Claudio Miranda DP'd one of my favorite films too, featuring my guy Bradley Pitts, Curious Case of Benjamin Button. I'm always making that joke like, oh, like my friend Kyle, he has like the Benjamin Button disease because he's so old. He's worked on Life of Pi, which I've yet to see, but I know based on some stills, the trailers, it's already kind of had its past in pop culture. I know it's a very beautiful movie as well. And then he's worked with Joseph Kosinski too on Oblivion. Oblivion was also some really strange sci-fi film. I feel like Tom Cruise really fucks with sci-fi and kind of doing or approaching different narratives that, you know, typically aren't shown in mainstream Hollywood films. And that movie, the set designs and the way it appeared was gorgeous. We're dealing with a DP who really knows what he's doing, has a great style, and knows how to make a film look great. As a cinematographer for the film, I'd give him a 5 out of 5. The cinematography in the movie, like I said, I feel like is the main part that I took away from it. There was a lot of moments that are in my head that I can't really translate now, but just on the trailer alone, and like the different sets that they had to deal with and the locations and like shooting planes, it seems so complicated, and they did such a beautiful job at executing it. So this film had 7 writers. I'm not really gonna get in depth and discuss each individual writer. I feel like when a film has several heads in the writing room, it might get convoluted, a bit complicated, and some ideas won't match or get translated, but it always is good to have people with different mindsets to revise and create drafts and such. Overall, I feel like the writing, the dialogue, there was some very cheesy moments, and that goes back to me saying like it feels very 80s-esque, like the lines that are delivered. Some of the scenes where it's like, I don't know, like when she's ringing that bell, you know, and gets carried out, it feels a bit odd to me. It just feels a bit like out of place. There's probably places that do that, you know, like I understand there's places that have traditions or whatever, but it felt so inauthentic to me. For some reason, it just did. The story isn't too complicated. We're really just following Maverick returning into the role of being in Top Gun, but as a teacher, and now he has to teach other pilots, some of the top pilots in the country, how to maneuver in the sky, kind of how he does with his confidence, not thinking, just doing, to complete a mission that, you know, is just very obscure in itself. I mean, no, the enemy we don't really know, which is good. I like that they're not showing like an Arab guy, like always. They always do that. They always throw a Russian guy or Arab, like that's the enemy, really. So I like how they keep the enemy like under masks, like it's just an enemy, you know? It's a very classic action movie, an enemy, a faceless enemy. Let's face them, let's kill them together. I think they did a great job at portraying the severity of the mission as well. There's moments where these pilots are pushing themselves to the limit. But again, to backtrack to what I was saying, the movie just feels so safe. They're dealing with high altitudes, high speeds, insane amount of training. It's all dangerous, and even in the mission, once it's completed, no one dies. No one has to die, but I feel like if it's a mission with that severity, something has to happen. You know, someone needs to go, and no one went. They just kept teasing someone dying, but then someone comes and saves the day. They did that like 3 or 4 times. You know, after like the 3rd time of someone just swooping in, saving the day, it gets a little silly. You know, it makes you feel like you're watching a movie, and it's a bit too safe for me personally. Although it was thrilling in some moments, I already knew in my head, like, well, nothing's gonna happen to him. They'll figure it out. Someone's gonna save him, la-di-da. And there were some crazy unrealistic moments here. How are you gonna sneak on a base and just steal a plane and fly away? That's pretty ballsy. I assume soldiers have done this previously, but to not have faced any sort of on-ground opposition, that's nuts. The story, I'll give it 3 out of 5. I think it's an interesting narrative, and it's cool how they bring back Maverick as a character, but more in the teacher role, and how the story unfolds, I think is pretty dope. But it's just too safe for me, and someone has to die. But it's just a little bit too safe for me, and the dialogue comes off a bit forced and cheesy sometimes, and the scenes, certain particular scenes, I feel like we just could have been better without him. And you know, it's not a Tom Cruise. It's not a Tom Cruise movie without him riding a motorcycle, you know? So after seeing a couple of those scenes, I was just like, come on, you know? I feel like if you're hyper aware of these situations that an actor's in that can maybe take you out of a movie, you should kind of maybe avoid it. Let the guy ride his motorcycles, you know? He's a great actor, he's a brave guy. Give him the motorcycles. Give Tom Cruise the motorcycles. So if casting here, we have Tom Cruise just reprising the role as Maverick, Jennifer Connelly as Penny, his like love interest, which you always have to have a love interest, I guess, in a movie. My girl said that. Why do you always have to have a love interest? Miles Teller's here as Rooster. I fuck with Miles Teller. I like his energy. I think here he wasn't given too much, and he just comes off as this like, you know, macho guy, but he's connected to one of the characters, you know, his father in the original Top Gun. So he does carry this weight and this heaviness of losing his father and treating Maverick in a way that makes sense towards that whole side of the narrative, especially since Maverick kind of fucked him over and pulled out his application to the Naval Academy, which set him back 4 years or something like that. I mean, that's kind of a dick move, but if your father says like, oh, I don't want my son flying or something, then, you know, I feel like that character Maverick had a certain responsibility, and he dealt with it in the way that he thought he should have. We have Val Kilmer returning in the role as well as Iceman. It was great to see him on screen, especially since I know what he's going through in reality, and I love how they wrote around what he's experiencing, because it just makes it that much more authentic, that whole scene and that whole moment that he visited him in his home and they had this dialogue back and forth. It's interesting how sometimes you don't need to have verbal dialogue. It could just be through body language that you speak to another character, because he was just typing his dialogue and Tom Cruise and him were having this discussion. And as simple as that scene I felt was the most poignant and realistic from every other scene in terms of just dialogue between characters. There's too many characters. John Hamm is in this film as well, and he's always great on the screen, but I can't see him and not think about Mad Men. I always think about Mad Men because that's one of my favorite shows and hence why I love John Hamm. But to see him on here as like a lead role where he just like is putting his foot down, it's kind of cool. But Maverick is the type of character that always branches out into like a place outside of the box that gets him into a shit position, but it always just showcases like he is the best person for a certain situation. So it's just funny seeing John Hamm try to be serious and angry at him while also just understanding like, hey, this is probably one of the best pilots we have and we need him for this mission. So it's like this lenience of Maverick's actions and like antics. I'm not gonna touch on everybody. I think the casting was just very well done. I think the casting is great. It does have that feeling of an 80s film where every character has their kind of niche personality. Like they had the nerdy kid, they had the buff white dude who's just the asshole. His name was Hangman. He lets people hang in the air. How do you let like a partner hang? That's the worst nickname to have, you know? I feel like that guy needs to figure some things out in his life. But the actor, Glen Powell, he did a great job at playing a douche. I mean, you need a douche in those films sometimes, and that guy was a douche. The casting, I'll give a 5 out of 5. It's really great that they got a variety of people, and it's not just this blank white slate of individuals. You know, you get a variety of personalities, genders, and those dynamics actually really pay off on screen in an interesting way. Casting the characters, they kind of coincide together in that theme, and yeah, I think the characters are cool. Maverick, we get a sense of like who he is as an individual, but at the same time, since it's an action movie, we get a very surface level understanding of him. And I like how the film sometimes shows you flashbacks and reminds you of the previous film, not making it necessary to watch the original Top Gun, and it shows you some of the turmoil he's dealing with. But overall, he's just this cocky, confident dude who seems to just win every time. You know, so it's a bit empty in that way. Like he's not, you know, I get it. He's like the Mission Impossible guy. So let me backtrack. Casting characters as it is together, I'm gonna give it a 4 out of 5. Tom Cruise should have died. So the score of the film I thought was pretty great. I don't think it's too memorable in the sense like, I always just refer to Interstellar that has my favorite soundtrack by Hans Zimmer. That's a soundtrack that I carried out of that film afterwards for months after, and I would listen to it almost obsessively just because I love the atmosphere and the mood and the feeling that that music gave. This score very much fits into the dramatic sense of the film and it gets the job done, but it's not something that I personally was too attached to. There were some moments that I do remember thinking the score, oh, this is like really beautiful, poignant moment, especially like there was a shot where a ship is just pushing against water and it's that shot with Tom Cruise looking out as a silhouette. I really remember the score being powerful in that moment, but otherwise it didn't really captivate me. I think it was just doing its job as the scenes were playing out. So I'll give the score a 3 out of 5. So the sound design in these movies are pretty complicated because you have to communicate how these different planes sound, how the speed increasing sounds, how all these intricate moments up in the air, down in the ground, how all these things translate. And similar to Ford versus Ferrari, I think they did a really great job at just showing you the intensity of these moments, the power of these planes, especially when the engine starts spurring out and you see the flames. I really was taken away, and I saw it in IMAX, so I was more captivated by the power of the sound in the theater in specific moments than any other film I've seen recently. I think they did a really good job at telling us a story through sound in some moments, especially when characters are passing out due to the altitude and the speed. The sound just like hones in, gets claustrophobic. It's very cool how they can do that and make you feel like you are in the moment, in the scene with the character, experiencing the same thing they are. So the sound design, especially since this film is dealing with so many different assets, so many different locations, and so many different props and planes and such, I'm just gonna give a 5 out of 5. Pure respect, because sound is such an important thing in a film, and it really is one of the things that makes and breaks a movie sometimes, and the sound design in this film definitely helps prop it up. So overall, I'm gonna give this movie a 3 out of 5. It's a great experience, but I feel like we're gonna forget it in a couple of days. It's not too memorable. It's not gonna stay in your head. And if it does, I mean, great, you really enjoyed it. For me, I thought it was a bit too safe. I thought some moments were kind of cheesy. It really kind of channeled that 80s vibe of a film, which is not a bad thing. What do you think about it? Do you agree with me? Did you like it? Did you hate it? What's your rating? leave a comment below. Remember to like, comment, subscribe. Thanks for watching.